Hey everyone, I just wanted to go over your week 4 paper with you, the integrative paper part 1. Now that you have all learned about a variety of different theories for practice, now is your time to start thinking about what seems to fit best for you as a social worker and therapist. Um, as you have learned, there is no one-size-fits-all approach to treatment, which means at times you might be adjusting your approach depending on your client. However, it's also important that you believe in the way that you practice and determine which theoretical approach or approaches make the most sense for you, your values, and the way that you would like to practice as a social worker or therapist. It's also good to understand this and who you are as a social worker so that you can best determine those times that maybe you are not the best fit for a particular client and need to refer out. So for the purpose of this paper, you will be choosing one or two theories for practice that we have learned about in Social Work 630 and Social Work 639. This is important to note as we are focusing only on those learned from this course, not previous courses. You can also indicate some trauma-informed treatment practices, but make sure this is just in conjunction with a particular theory. For instance, you might choose cognitive behavior therapy, but is adjusted to treat trauma in trauma-focused CBT, for instance. So here you will see the key components of the paper. We have 3 sections to this paper, with the first being the overview of the theories you have chosen. Make sure you hit all of the points listed here for section 1. It might be useful to use subheadings. Just keep in mind the appropriate APA formatting if you do. The overview section is pretty straightforward in terms of what's required. The only part that I can imagine might be confusing would be defining the role of the worker within the theory. An example of this might be how in attachment theory, the role of the worker might be to pay attention to nonverbal communication, to act with empathy and attunement in order to establish a positive attachment for the client, etc. You will also need to reference the NASW Code of Ethics within this section and detail how the theory is consistent with ethical standards for a social worker. Lastly, a very important piece is how does the theory address oppression? Here you might discuss how the theory would be adapted based on the needs of a variety of different groups and how they would address, how it might address issues related to discrimination. So then in section 2, that will be all about your strengths and limitations of the theory. Please make sure that you thoroughly explain both strengths and limitations. And that would be just how, how the strengths might be how the theories in practice would work best in certain situations with clients with certain problems, and what would the limitations be. I think I had mentioned in Social Work 630 previously, certainly a population that there you might experience limitations with something like CBT would be with those populations that have limited literacy skills, for instance. That's just an example of what you might indicate for limitations. Section 3 will be a more thorough description of the last point in section 1. Discuss how you might adapt your way of practice to address the needs of different groups. It would be helpful to discuss at least 2 or 3 different groups and discuss how you might adapt the approaches in order to meet their needs. And when I reference groups, I mean, people of different socioeconomic status, race, ethnicity, age, gender, any kind of LGBT related issues you might acknowledge here as well. And I know that there are a variety of articles that we have read throughout this course as well as Social Work 630 that you could use to reference in this section in terms of how different theories could be adapted for different cultural considerations. So please do review the rubric as I do grade specific to the rubric. Note that there is a requirement of at least 5 references for this paper. And APA format is listed on the rubric, which it's not always listed as an issue that you'll be graded on for every paper, but it is for this one. So as usual, make sure to review your APA manual or the Purdue OWL website. I am available to answer any questions you might have regarding the paper via Canvas message, or we could always arrange for a Zoom meeting as well. Please don't hesitate to reach out, and I hope you enjoy writing the paper.